Today, we're going to commit a crime to the stance police because we're returning the transporter back to standard. It just may well be the end of the road for our Volkswagen Transporter. A dream Volkswagen Transporter which I've been chasing for years.
Not all good things last forever though. Unfortunately, we need to sell the van so I can buy myself my first house. With a dream specification, it took me ages to find this, but not to everyone's cup of tea. With the van being so low, we're struggling to sell it as it is.
But today, we're removing the Bilstein Solo coilovers and springs on this thing to return it to its standard ride height so we can hopefully sell it, because as it stands, nobody wants to buy it as it is.
With it being the hottest day in the UK so far, it's going to be a hot one working on the van today. We're going to remove the wiper blades and then remove the scuttle panel so we can get access to the top mount nuts. We're then going to remove the wheels, as this will allow access to get the hub off and actually complete the job in hand, making sure safety comes first.
Now that the van's up in the air, the wheels are off, we can now make a start on getting the Bilstein Solo coilovers removed from this thing.
We can't remove the strut with the ABS line and the brake lines in place, so we cut them free. We're then going to undo the 32mm nut for the drive shaft, so we can pull the drive shaft out, which will give us some more movement. We're then going to undo the 22mm nuts holding the coilover into the hub, then disattaching the drop link. Then we can go over to the bottom ball joint using a star bit and remove the ball joint from the bottom of the hub. With the ball joint out of the way, we're now going to undo the steering arm. Now, this is where I broke out the sledgehammer because I could not break the ball joint here for love nor money. So I thought, go big or go home. 2 hours later. Finally, with that success of getting that ball joint off, we can then use a sledgehammer again to knock the hub free from the coilover itself. Now these things seize up pretty hard, so it does take quite a bit of persuasion to finally get it out. And just like that, it's free. We then need to undo the top nut, which is the last thing holding it in. And just like that, the strut's out. The next part of this is to disassemble the Bilstein coilover so we can take the top hat off and install it on the standard transporter suspension. We need to make sure we use spring clamps on this, as there's a lot of tension in that spring and you do not want to be messing around with that without some sort of spring clamp or compression in there. As you can see, we're now doing the top nut up so we can rebuild that as one piece. And just like that, it's ready to go in.
Ready to go back in the van to return this thing to stock ride height. Now, whilst we're on the topic of the stock suspension, I want to have a massive shout out to Chris at Lowdown Transporters because he actually supplied us the suspension for the van, so massive shout out to him. If you haven't checked out his YouTube channel, I'll leave a link in the description and put a little thing on the bottom of the screen now. He gets up to some awesome stuff, bagging transporters.
We are now bagging his T5 on solo suspension.
He's just cut the back off a 15 window split screen to make it into a camper van. So big shout out to Chris, check out his channel, and thank you for the old new suspension.
Everything's going so smoothly. I've got the new strut built up ready to go back in, and all I have to do is the simple steps of completing the reverse of taking it apart. As you can see here, I'm manhandling the hub into position so we can get this all buttoned up. I must admit I probably should have disassembled it a bit more to make it a little bit light to manoeuvre into position. But then the feeling didn't last long and I spoke too soon.
Oh, why don't you just love working on cars, because nothing ever goes to plan and I'm pulling my hair out. This thing is giving me an absolute ball ache of a time and I'm really close to giving up. So this is a problem we're facing. I cannot, no matter how much I try, get the drive shaft back in there. The angle of it just isn't working. I wondered if the strut wasn't back up properly, but I think it is. It's actually sitting too high on here to try and give us some extra clearance, but I really can't fathom it.
Until I celebrated because I managed to actually get it in. But the reality is, the success didn't last for long. this is what defeat looks like. The van defeated me. Just a simple job of changing over a couple of struts turned out to be an absolute ball ache, and I ended up putting the Bilstein coilovers back in place of the standard struts. Hope was lost, and I just couldn't be bothered to battle with the van any longer.
Who said motoring was fun? Stumbled into so many problems with this. I could not get the standard strut back in the hub and get the bottom ball joint fastened up to the arm. It just would not work. Chris did warn me of this and said it was an absolute pain in the backside to do. But with the sun coming out and being the hottest day in the UK so far, with our 2 days of summer, I've decided to give up. I've chucked the Bilstein coilover back in, and my plan is, as you've already seen, the hub doesn't, or the strut doesn't go through the hub as much as it did, which has in turn raised the front up. So we're now going to do the same on the other side, and then see where we stand from there.
Now in a pit style type fashion, we're going to get this side swapped over faster than you could ever imagine. And before you know it, the wheel's back on and the van is down on the ground at its new height.
We need to crack on with the rear before we have a look at the front. Now I have a feeling that we're going to get the rear springs on, but we won't have enough adjustability in the front for it to sit level. Let's hit it.
This had to be easier than the front, please God. So we started off with removing the rear wheel. Using an impact gun, 21mm either side, we tried to undo the nut and bolt holding this in. But it was not playing ball. I even tried to stand on it and it would not budge, but eventually we finally managed to get it out. With the lower bolts removed, I then turned my attention to removing this ratchet strap type thing which was holding the arm from dropping. I guess it's because the spring is so small compared to the other one, it would just fall out. I then undid the 21mm nut holding the top of the shock absorber in place. I would recommend anyone to buy Toyo tyres. As you can see, I've got my Team Toyo t-shirt on. This isn't an ad, but I strongly believe in their tyres. Now we had to remove the rear spring. It wouldn't fit through that gap, so I had to push it through onto the floor. But then we did come across another problem. The spring on the left is the Bilstein one, and the spring on the right is the Transporter one. Now, as you can see, this top hat in my hand would not fit on the new Transporter spring. This meant that I had to order 2 spring hats for top and bottom for both springs, which are going to take a few days to arrive, halting our current progress. But in the meantime, we removed the spring on the other side, as well as removing the dampener again from it, getting us ready to install the other spring when the time came. Before we knew it, the spring caps had arrived, and the last thing to do was to get these fitted to the van, which left us with some suspect fitment.
I can get my head inside this wheel arch now. It is without doubt a criminal offence what I have done to this van. I've taken the cool factor from it and made it look absolutely hideous.
We managed to pick these wheels up for £150 from Facebook Marketplace. We also managed to sell the 1552s for £1,000, so it's an absolute steal for these.
Wait until you see what the rear of this thing looks like with the new old springs in it. I can tell you one thing, I think the thought of getting the Bilstein coilovers adjusted to match this height is going to be a very, very hard challenge, and I think it will lead to defeat, which means I think I'm going to have to put the standard front struts on this thing and just try and overcome the issues I had before trying to get them fitted, because I don't think there's any other way. But if you want to find out if we do that and how it works, you're going to have to come back next week, because that is all we have got time for. If you have enjoyed this video, smash that thumbs up button, smash that subscribe button down below. It is absolutely free and helps the channel grow. Check out Lowdown Transporters, check out Auto Finesse, check out Surrey Auto Works. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.